The palace of Ceres stood tall on the edge of the silver plains. Its crystal towers shone under the twin suns, reflecting colors across the sky. Inside those shining halls lived Princess Leora, the only daughter of the alien king. She was known for her calm voice, her soft words, and her quiet ways. Many in her people respected her wisdom, yet they also whispered that she was too reserved, too gentle for the heavy crown she would one day wear. Leora often walked alone through the gardens of the palace. Flowers from many worlds grew there, and fountains of clear light shimmered in the air. Her steps were graceful, but her eyes carried a weight she never shared. She saw the soldiers who guarded the gates, both her people and the humans who had come to join in alliance. She watched them train in the open fields, their movements sharp and steady. Among them, one stood out to her more than any other. His name was Aaron. He was not the tallest soldier nor the strongest, but his manner was different. While many soldiers laughed loudly or showed pride in their strength, Aaron remained calm. He spoke with respect to everyone, whether alien or human. He helped the younger soldiers carry their weapons, and when the alien guards spoke in uncertain words, he listened with patience. To Leora, he seemed like a stone in the river, unmoving yet steady, while all else rushed past. From the high balcony of her chamber, Leora often saw him. She did not let her eyes linger too long, for fear that others might notice. Still, her heart moved whenever she caught sight of him practicing in the courtyard. She told herself that it was only because he was different from the rest, yet deep inside she knew it was something more. But she never spoke of it. She was a princess, and a princess did not reveal such feelings so easily. The humans had arrived only 2 years before, after long talks of peace. The galaxy was divided between many factions, and only by standing together could peace survive. Leora's father, the king, had trusted the humans enough to invite them into their capital. It was a fragile alliance, and one that many still doubted. The princess knew this well, and so she chose silence. She feared that even a small word of affection toward a human might break the trust her people had in her. One evening, as the sun set behind the plains, Leora sat in the library. The halls were filled with tall shelves of glowing books, each one holding the history of her people. She traced her fingers over the titles but found no comfort in them. Her mind wandered back to the courtyard, to the sound of steel and footsteps, to the image of a human soldier who moved with both strength and gentleness. She closed her eyes and whispered a thought she would never share with another. Why do I look at him so often? That same night, Aaron was on duty near the outer walls of the palace. His fellow soldiers joked among themselves, speaking of battles and adventures, but Aaron remained quiet. He preferred to observe, to listen, and to act when needed rather than waste words. He noticed how the alien citizens looked at him. Some showed curiosity, others suspicion, yet he treated all with the same even respect. To him, this mission was not about pride or conquest, but about building trust. He knew peace was fragile, and he wanted to protect it. From a hidden window high above, unseen by the guards, Princess Leora watched him again. The lantern light shone on his armor, and his calm stance set him apart from the others. She leaned against the cool crystal wall and felt her heart stir. She wanted to speak to him, even just once. But how could she, a princess, approach a soldier? She feared that her words would sound foolish or that her people would judge her. So she kept her silence. The following day, the palace hosted a small gathering between human officers and alien advisors. Leora sat at her father's side, quiet as always. She listened as plans for trade and defense were discussed. Most of the voices were loud, each side trying to prove their strength. But in the corner of the hall, Aaron stood at attention with the guards. He did not speak, nor was he required to. Yet when Leora's eyes drifted toward him, she found comfort in his steady presence. She almost wished he would speak, for she longed to hear his voice in a moment free of duty. Later, in the quiet of her chamber, Leora thought about him again. She remembered the way he had helped one of her people who had stumbled near the training grounds. He had not laughed, nor had he looked down on them. He had lifted them gently, with respect in his eyes. That small act had touched her heart more, deeply than any grand speech from the visiting officers. She knew then that her feelings were not born of simple admiration. They were something more, something that frightened her, because she was not ready to face them. In the days that followed, Leora's thoughts became restless. She found herself walking the halls where the human soldiers passed. She would sit near the gardens where the guards rotated their shifts. She told herself it was coincidence, but deep down she knew she was only hoping for a glimpse of him. Whenever Aaron noticed her, he bowed his head with quiet respect, never overstepping the boundary of soldier and princess. To Leora, even that small gesture carried weight. It showed that he understood her place. And yet, without words, he acknowledged her presence. One afternoon, a sudden storm swept across the plains. The sky turned dark, and the winds howled through the palace towers. Leora stood by the window, watching the guards below struggle against the heavy rain. Among them was Aaron. His armor was soaked, but he held his position without complaint. She pressed her hand to the glass, wishing for a moment that she could walk among them, that she could stand beside him without fear or rule to stop her. But she pulled back, reminding herself once more that she was bound by duty. That night, as the storm calmed and the stars returned, Leora sat at her writing desk. She began to write in her private journal, the only place where her heart could speak. She wrote of the storm, of the soldiers, and of the human who stood firm like the mountain even when the winds tried to break him. She wrote of her silence, of the way her heart called out, yet her voice remained hidden. Her words filled the page, but when she finished, she closed the book and locked it away. No one would ever see it. In her mind, she told herself that this silence would protect her. It would protect her people, her crown, and her heart. But in the quiet corners of her soul, she already knew the truth. Silence could not last forever. The day would come when she could no longer hide. And when that day came, her heart would no longer belong to her alone. The days in Ceres passed with a strange balance of peace and tension. The humans and the aliens had agreed to stand together, yet deep in the hearts of many, doubt still lived. Some of Leora's people looked at the human soldiers with caution, wondering if they could truly be trusted. Some humans, too, whispered that the aliens were fragile and too proud to fight. But in the middle of these uncertain voices, there were those who simply chose to act with honesty and respect. Among them stood Aaron. Every morning, before the twin suns rose high, Aaron trained in the courtyard. His movements were steady, his strikes strong but controlled. Unlike many others, he never tried to impress or show off. He trained not for attention, but to sharpen himself, to be ready for the day his duty called. The alien guards who watched him slowly grew curious. They began to practice alongside him, first with distance, then with quiet steps closer, until at last they trained side by side. Without words, Aaron had earned their trust. Princess Leora noticed this change. From her balcony, she often saw him, training with both humans and aliens, his focus unbroken, his patience steady. She watched him correct the stance of a young alien guard who struggled to hold a blade. Instead of mocking, he gently showed the right movement, guiding the soldier's arms until the blade held firm. The young guard bowed to him with thanks. Leora's chest felt warm at the sight. Aaron was building a bridge between two people without speeches, without grand words. He was building it with simple acts. One afternoon, the calm of Ceres was shaken. A group of alien youths had wandered, too far from the city walls, chasing after the glowing creatures that ran across the silver plains. What had seemed like a game quickly turned into danger. A massive beast, tall as a house with claws like steel, emerged from the tall grass. Its roar shook the ground, and the youths froze in fear. The palace guards were too far to reach them, in time. Panic spread among the citizens as they saw the children in danger. Aaron, who had been patrolling near the training fields, heard the cries. Without waiting for orders, he ran across the plains. His boots struck the ground with speed, and his heart pounded not with fear, but with purpose. The beast lowered its head, ready to strike. The alien children screamed, their small hands clutching each other. Aaron shouted, drawing the beast's eyes to him. He raised his spear and charged. The creature swung a claw at him, the strike tearing through the earth. Aaron rolled aside, dust rising around him. He struck the beast's side with his spear, the metal blade digging deep. The creature howled, thrashing wildly. The children tried to run, but the beast turned toward them again. Aaron moved between them, shielding them with his body. He shouted for the youths to run back toward the city walls, his voice firm yet steady. They obeyed, their small legs carrying them away. The fight grew fierce. The beast lunged again, and Aaron held his ground. His spear snapped under the force of its weight, leaving him with only the broken shaft. Still, he did not fall back. With the broken weapon, he struck at its eye, forcing the creature to stumble. By now, alien guards had reached the field. Together, they surrounded the beast, striking from all sides until at last it fell. Silence followed, broken only by the heavy breaths of those who had fought. Aaron stood with dust covering his armor, blood on his arm from a shallow cut, but his eyes were calm. The alien children clung to their parents who had rushed to them, safe and unharmed. Many eyes turned to Aaron, and in them was no suspicion, no doubt, only gratitude. The alien guards bowed their heads toward him, and whispers spread through the crowd. A human had risked his life to protect alien children. A human had fought as one of their own. From the high balcony, Princess Leora had seen it all. Her heart had raced with fear when the beast appeared. She had gripped the railing so tightly that her hands hurt. And when she saw Aaron throw himself, between the children and danger, something inside her broke open. She felt pride, relief, and a warmth so strong it left her breathless. For the first time, she whispered his name aloud, her voice trembling. Aaron. That night, the halls of the palace were filled with talk of the event. Advisors spoke of the courage shown, of how the act could strengthen the alliance. The king himself praised the soldiers, both alien and human, for their unity. But it was clear to all who had seen that Aaron had been the first to act, the one who placed himself between danger and the innocent. His name spread quickly among the people, carried with respect. Aaron, however, did not speak of glory. When others asked him about the fight, he only said that any soldier would have done the same. He returned to his duties as though nothing had changed, his calm nature unchanged. But for Leora, everything had changed. She could no longer see him as just another soldier. He had become a symbol, not only of strength, but of kindness and courage, and her feelings, once hidden and quiet, grew stronger with every thought of him. In the quiet of her chamber, Leora wrote again in her journal. She wrote of the beast, of the children's cries, of the moment she thought he might fall. She wrote of his courage, his steadiness, and how he carried himself with no pride after victory. She confessed, at least to herself, that her admiration had become something deeper, something that frightened her, yet filled her heart with light. She closed the book and pressed it to her chest, her eyes wet with unspoken emotion. Days passed, and though the city returned to peace, the memory of that event lingered. Children played safely inside the walls, parents watched with more care, and soldiers trained with new energy. But above all, a quiet respect grew between the humans and the aliens, seeded by one act of bravery. And in the heart of Princess Leora, the seed of love continued to grow. hidden still but alive and unstoppable. The city of Ceres glowed under the twin suns, yet beneath its beauty, a shadow was spreading. The alliance between humans and aliens had brought hope, but not all were pleased by it. Far beyond the Silver Plains, hidden groups plotted against peace. They feared that unity would make their power weak, and so they prepared to strike from the dark. Strange signals began to reach the palace guards. Small disruptions appeared in the defense grid, lights flickered without reason, and some patrols reported faint movements at night near the borders. Though no open attack had come, the sense of danger grew heavier with each passing day. The king called for stronger watch, and both alien and human soldiers worked together to guard the capital. Aaron was among those soldiers. He did not complain about the long hours or the harsh nights. He walked the walls with steady steps, his eyes sharp, always watching. The alien guards trusted him more now, after the day he had saved the children. They stood beside him with respect, often seeking his advice when trouble arose. Yet Aaron remained humble, speaking little, choosing only to act when needed. To him, duty was simple. Protect the city, protect the people, keep the peace. Princess Leora felt the change as well. The palace was no longer filled with only calm voices. Now there were meetings that lasted late into the night, talks of spies and traitors, whispers of sabotage. Leora sat quietly at her father's side during those councils, listening to every word. Her heart grew heavy, for she knew what danger meant. Her people had seen war before, and she feared that it might return. In those same meetings, her eyes often wandered toward the guards who stood at the walls, and among them, always steady, was Aaron. His presence gave her strength. Even when the council spoke of threats and shadows, she felt calmer knowing that he was there. But she did not tell him this. Her feelings remained locked inside, like a secret flame that warmed her but that she dared not show. One evening, as the suns sank low, the alarm bells rang across Ceres. A patrol had been attacked outside the capital. When the survivors returned, they carried wounds and stories of strange weapons, weapons unlike any known to the palace. The attackers had vanished quickly, leaving no clear trace, but the message was clear. The peace was under threat. The king ordered stricter patrols. The human commander worked closely with alien officers, arranging mixed groups of soldiers to guard the outer lands. Aaron was chosen for one such patrol. Leora heard his name spoken in the council chamber, and though she kept her face calm, inside her chest her heart tightened. She wanted to speak, to ask him to stay safe, but she remained silent. A princess could not show fear for a single soldier, even if her soul wished to. That night, Leora stood at her balcony, watching the patrols march out across the Silver Plains. Torches burned in their hands, their armor shining faintly under the stars. Among them, she saw Aaron walking with his usual calm steps. She whispered softly into the night, though no one could hear. Return safe. The patrol moved far from the city walls. The air grew colder, the grass whispering under the night wind. The soldiers walked in silence, their eyes sharp. Suddenly, a flash lit the darkness, and beams of energy struck the ground near them. The patrol scattered, shields raised. Figures in dark armor appeared from the tall grass, their faces hidden behind masks. They fought with speed and skill, striking hard, then vanishing like shadows. It was no simple band of raiders. These were trained warriors, sent with purpose. Aran held his ground. His spear clashed against strange blades that hummed with energy. His arms shook with the force, but he did not step back. Around him, human and alien soldiers fought together, shouting to warn each other, covering each other's sides. Though the attack was fierce, the patrol did not break. They stood firm, their unity holding strong. At last, the dark figures withdrew. Fading into the night as quickly as they had appeared, the soldiers caught their breath, tending to their wounded. Aaron wiped the dust from his face, his eyes steady as ever. He knew this was only the beginning. Whoever these enemies were, they had chosen their time carefully. He also knew that if they were not stopped, greater battles would come. When the patrol returned to the city, the palace was filled with worry. Reports spread quickly. The king called his advisors, and the humans joined the council. The attackers were unknown, their weapons dangerous, their goals uncertain. But one thing was clear. They wanted to break the alliance before it grew stronger. The council prepared for defense, and guards doubled their watch. Fear touched every corner of Ceres. Leora listened to these words in silence, her hands folded in her lap. But inside, her thoughts were not only of her people, they were also of Aaron. She had heard of his courage, of how he had stood against the masked warriors without falling back. She wished to thank him, to tell him how proud she felt. Yet once again her lips remained closed. She feared that speaking her heart might weaken her image before the council, so she carried her words inside, and only her eyes revealed the depth of her feelings when she looked his way. Days turned into nights, and the tension in Ceres grew. Whispers filled the streets. Citizens feared to leave the walls, and soldiers stood ready at every gate. Yet even in this heavy air there was one steady light. Aaron continued his duty without change. He walked the walls, trained with the guards, and spoke with quiet strength. His calm presence reminded others that fear must not rule them. Many drew courage from him without even knowing it. The palace of Ceres stood bright under the morning suns, but behind its shining walls, unease still lingered. The attack on the patrol had shaken the city. The citizens walked with careful steps, and soldiers tightened their grip on their weapons. Everyone knew the masked enemies were still out there, watching from the shadows, waiting for another chance to strike. Princess Leora felt the tension each day. She attended the councils, listening to the plans for stronger defenses. She walked through the gardens, hearing the whispers of worried citizens. Yet in the midst of the growing fear, she found her eyes drawn, as always, to the soldiers standing guard. And among them, she always found Aaron. His calm presence gave her a sense of safety. Even when danger pressed close, his steady nature reminded her that strength could exist without pride, that courage could live without noise. But the enemies had not given up. On a quiet evening, just as the twin suns sank low and shadows stretched, across the plains they struck again. This time, they aimed directly at the heart of the palace. Disguised figures slipped through the gates, their steps silent, their blades glowing faintly in the dark. Their goal was not to fight openly, but to capture someone of great value. Their eyes were set on the princess herself. Inside her chamber, Leora was reading by the soft light of a crystal lamp. Her thoughts were restless, filled with worry for her people and with the quiet warmth she carried in her heart for Aaron. She had just closed her book when she felt a shift in the air, a sound too soft for most to notice. Her eyes rose, and she saw shadows moving near the balcony. Before she could cry out, masked intruders leapt inside. Her heart raced. She stepped back, but her voice remained steady. "Who are you? What do you want?" The intruders did not answer. One raised a weapon, another moved toward her. She knew their intent. They had come to take her. Fear struck her, but she did not scream. She stood tall, even as her hands trembled. She was a princess of Ceres, and she would not show weakness. But before the attackers could reach her, the door to her chamber burst open. Aaron charged inside, spear in hand, his eyes burning with focus. He had been on patrol near her wing when he sensed movement on the balcony. Without hesitation, he had rushed to her defense. His sudden entrance startled the intruders, but they quickly turned their blades toward him. The fight was fierce. Aaron's spear clashed against the glowing weapons, sparks flying in the dim light. He moved with both skill and determination, blocking each strike that came near Leora. One intruder tried to rush past him toward her, but Aaron spun and drove his spear into the attacker's side, forcing him back. His every motion carried a single message: the princess would not be taken while he stood. Leora watched with wide eyes. Her fear was heavy, but alongside it came something else. Her heart beat faster not only because of danger, but because of him. She saw how he fought not for glory, not for himself, but for her. She had always known he was brave, but now she saw the truth with her own eyes. He would risk everything to protect her. At last, the palace guards arrived, answering the alarm that Aaron's shout had raised. The remaining intruders, realizing they were outnumbered, fled into the night. Silence fell over the chamber, broken only by Leora's quick breaths. Aaron lowered his spear, his chest rising and falling with effort. But his eyes were calm as always. He turned to her and bowed slightly. "Are you unharmed, princess?" he asked, his voice steady. Leora's lips parted, but for a moment no words came. She had faced danger, yet it was his question that shook her heart the most. She nodded slowly, her voice soft but clear. "Yes, thanks to you." For the first time, she allowed her feelings to show in her eyes. Her usual reserve melted, replaced by a warmth that she could no longer hide. Aaron met her gaze, and though he remained respectful, he saw something in her eyes that went beyond simple gratitude. For a moment, time seemed to still, leaving only the two of them standing in the quiet chamber. The guards began to check the room, speaking quickly of security, of chasing the intruders, of strengthening the defenses. But Leora's focus did not leave Aaron. She stepped closer, lowering her voice so only he could hear. "You saved me," she whispered. "Not once, but twice now. I will not forget this." Aaron bowed his head. "It is my duty, princess. Any soldier would do the same," but she shook her head gently. "No, not any soldier. You." Her words hung in the air, soft but filled with meaning. Aaron did not answer, but his silence spoke enough. Respect, loyalty, and something deeper passed between them, even if neither dared to name it. That night, after the chamber was secured and the guards stood at every corner, Leora sat alone by her window. The stars glittered above, yet her thoughts were not with the stars. They were with Aaron. She remembered his steady hands, his sharp eyes, the way he had stood between her and danger without hesitation. She pressed her hand to her chest, feeling the fast beat of her heart. For so long she had kept her feelings hidden, silent and locked away. But after tonight, she knew they had grown too strong to ignore. In the barracks, Aaron sat polishing his weapon. His body carried bruises from the fight, but he paid them little mind. His thoughts returned to the princess, to the moment their eyes had met after the danger had passed. He had seen something there, something that stirred emotions he had long kept buried under duty. But he reminded himself of his place. He was a soldier, and she was a princess. He could not allow himself to think beyond that. And yet, no matter how many times he told himself this, the image of her eyes remained clear. In his mind, the attack had failed, but everyone in the palace knew it would not be the last. Stronger enemies would come, and darker days were ahead. But in the midst of the fear, something new had begun. A bond, fragile but real, had formed between the reserved princess and the gentle soldier. Neither spoke of it openly, yet both felt its quiet strength. And though the shadows were closing in, that bond shone like a small light, steady and unbroken, a light that would only grow brighter with time. The attack on the princess's chamber left the palace uneasy for many days. Guards filled every hall, patrols doubled at the gates, and the citizens of Saris whispered about enemies moving in the shadows. Yet for Princess Leora, the greatest, change was not in the palace walls but within her own heart. She could not forget the night Aaron had rushed to her side. The sound of blades clashing still echoed in her mind, but more than that, the memory of his eyes after the battle stayed with her. He had looked at her not only as a soldier guarding a royal figure, but as a man who would give his life to protect another. That thought warmed her, yet also filled her with fear, for she knew the path of her heart was not the path her crown allowed. Leora walked through the palace gardens more often now. She told herself it was to calm her thoughts, to seek wisdom in the quiet fountains and glowing flowers, but she knew the truth. It was because the gardens were close to where the guards often trained, and from there she could sometimes see Aaron. She never called him near, never spoke to him openly, but she carried his image with her as she walked, among the blossoms. Her silence was her shield, though inside her silence a storm was growing. The king, her father, noticed her restless eyes during the councils. She listened carefully to every word, yet sometimes her gaze wandered to the doors, where the soldiers stood. The king mistook it for fear of another attack and grew worried for her safety. "Leora," he said one evening as they walked the long hall together, "you must remain strong. The people look to you as a figure of calm. If they see fear in your eyes, their hearts will tremble." "I understand, Father," Leora replied gently. She bowed her head, not daring to tell him the truth. She was not afraid of the shadows outside. She was afraid of the feelings inside her own heart. Meanwhile, Aaron continued his duties as before. He trained with the guards, patrolled the walls, and stood at his post during the long hours of council. He said little, as was his way, but his steady nature was noticed by many. The alien guards now treated him as one of their own. Some even asked him to guide their drills, for they trusted his calm and clear teaching. Aaron never boasted, never spoke of his courage, yet his presence alone inspired others. And still, in quiet moments, his thoughts turned toward the princess. He remembered her voice after the battle, soft yet full of meaning. He remembered how her eyes had met his, how for an instant she had looked not as a distant royal, but as a woman whose heart had reached out to his. He tried to push these thoughts aside, reminding himself of his place. But they returned again and again, no matter how firmly he held to duty. One evening, as the suns dipped behind the plains, Leora walked alone in the palace library. The tall shelves surrounded her with the wisdom of ages, but her heart carried questions no book could answer. She ran her fingers across the glowing titles and whispered to herself, "Can a princess love a soldier? Can her heart belong to one who serves, when her duty belongs to the crown?" She closed her eyes and imagined what it would be like to speak freely to Aaron. To thank him not as a princess but as a woman. To tell him of the warmth she felt when she saw his calm strength. The thought filled her chest with both hope and fear. She wanted to believe it could be possible, yet she feared the judgment of her people. Would they see it as weakness? Would they believe she had chosen her heart over her crown? That same night, in the barracks, Aaron sat sharpening his blade. The other soldiers laughed and told stories, but his mind was far away. He remembered the look on Leora's face after the attack. Not just fear, but gratitude, even admiration. He felt his chest grow heavy. He was only a soldier, yet a part of him longed for something more. But he shook his head and returned to his task. Duty first. Always duty. The tension in the city grew, as more reports came of enemy movements beyond the plains. The king ordered full readiness for war. Soldiers were placed on high alert, weapons prepared, and supply lines secured. Leora stood beside her father during the announcement to the people. She spoke with a clear voice, assuring them that Saris would not fall, that unity with the humans would bring strength. The citizens cheered, their hearts lifted by her calm words. Yet when she returned to her chamber, she pressed her hands over her heart and whispered, "How long can I hide?" The next day, a small ceremony was held to honor the patrol that had survived the attack beyond the walls. Leora stood on the high steps of the palace with her father as medals were given to the soldiers. When Aaron stepped forward to receive his, her eyes met his. For a moment, the world seemed quiet around them. She wished she could speak then, to thank him openly, to tell him what his courage meant to her. But before she could, the ceremony ended, and the chance was gone. That night, she returned to her journal, the only place her heart could speak without fear. She wrote of the council, of the threat of war, of the cheers of the citizens, and then she wrote of him. She wrote of the way he stood in silence as the medal was placed on his chest, his calm eyes steady, his pride hidden. She confessed, too, the pages that she wished to walk beside him not as a princess guarded by duty, but as a woman who had chosen freely. Tears touched her eyes as she closed the journal, for she knew her heart was leading her toward a path she could no longer ignore. The city braced for conflict, the palace prepared for siege, and soldiers sharpened their weapons. Shadows gathered beyond the plains, waiting for their chance to strike. Yet in the heart of the princess and the soldier, a different battle was being fought. A battle between duty and heart, between silence and truth. Neither knew how it would end, but both felt that the day was coming when choice could no longer be avoided. The twin suns rose slowly over the silver plains, casting long shadows across the city of Ceres. The calm that had settled over the palace in recent days was gone. Scouts reported large groups of the masked attackers gathering beyond the plains, preparing for a full assault. The city buzzed with urgency. Soldiers sharpened their weapons, and the guards strengthened the walls. Everyone could feel that a great battle was coming. Princess Leora stood in the balcony of her chamber, looking toward the plains. Her chest tightened at the thought of the approaching danger. The citizens depended on her. Her father relied on her wisdom. And yet her heart carried another weight, one that had grown silently over months. Her thoughts turned to Aaron. He would lead the soldiers into battle, risking himself for her people. She feared for him more than for anyone else, and that fear made her heart ache. In the training grounds below, Aaron moved among the soldiers, giving quick advice and reminders. He adjusted a young alien guard's stance, corrected a human soldier's shield grip, and checked the placement of weapons along the walls. His calm demeanor remained, even as the tension grew around him. To most, he was simply a skilled and disciplined soldier. But to Leora, he was a symbol of bravery and unwavering heart. The battle began as the suns reached their highest point. From the horizon, dark shapes advanced, their weapons glinting in the light. The alarms rang across the city. Soldiers rushed to their positions, both human and alien. Aaron led a group to the front lines, standing shoulder to shoulder with the alien guards. His voice carried over the noise as he directed the soldiers with precision and calm. Each command was firm, yet filled with the quiet respect that had always marked his actions. From her balcony, Leora watched the soldiers move into position. Her hands trembled slightly as she gripped the railing. She wanted to be among them, to help, to protect, but her place was here, overseeing the safety of the city. Yet her eyes found Aaron constantly. She followed his movements, noting how he encouraged the soldiers, how he inspired courage without words. And in that moment, she realized something. The feelings she had hidden for so long were no longer something she could keep silent. As the attackers reached the walls, the first clash erupted. Energy weapons sparked against shields, and the sound of battle filled the air. Aaron fought at the front, parrying attacks, pushing forward, protecting those near him. He moved with skill and care, aware of every soldier around him. He was brave, but he was also precise, never reckless. Leora's heart swelled with admiration, and her fear for him grew with every moment he faced danger. Suddenly, a group of masked attackers broke through a weak point in the outer defenses. They moved toward the inner courtyard where the citizens and non-combatants were gathered. Leora's breath caught in her throat. Her father's guards rushed forward, but the attackers were fast and skilled. Without hesitation, she ran toward the inner gates, defying the usual orders to stay within safety. Her hands glowed with protective energy, and she raised a barrier to shield the frightened citizens. Aaron noticed her movement. His eyes widened, briefly, then narrowed with focus. He knew the inner courtyard would be dangerous, yet he did not hesitate. He fought his way through the enemy, his spear striking with precision. When he reached the courtyard, Leora was there, raising her barrier with all her strength. Together they held the attackers at bay, their movements coordinated without words. She noticed his eyes meet hers across the battle, and in that instant her heart spoke louder than fear. The attackers pressed forward, relentless in their assault. Aaron was struck lightly on the shoulder, but he did not fall. Leora felt her chest tighten with worry, and she raised her voice, her words filled with strength she had never used before. "Aaron, be careful!" He turned to her, his eyes softening for a moment. "I am fine. Stay with the people, princess." "No!" she shouted, stepping closer, her energy barrier flaring brighter. "I will not let anything happen to you." There, voices carried over the battlefield. In that shared moment of urgency and courage, the bond between them deepened. Aaron realized then that her heart had been with him all this time, just as his had been with her. The truth could no longer be denied. The battle raged on, but together they held the attackers back until the reinforcements arrived. The enemy retreated into the plains, beaten but not destroyed. The city of Saris remained safe, and the citizens cheered for the bravery of the soldiers and their princess. Yet amidst the victory, Leora's thoughts were only for Aaron. As the sun dipped low, painting the plains with gold and red, she approached him in the quiet of the courtyard. His armor was scorched and dusted with dirt, yet his posture was calm and steady. She placed her hands on his shoulders, looking into his eyes with a courage that matched the battle they had just survived. "Aaron," she whispered, her voice trembling with emotion, "I can no longer hide it. I have admired you for so long, and my heart has been yours without permission. I love you." Aaron's eyes widened slightly, then softened. He took her hands gently in his own. "Princess Leora, I have felt the same, though I did not think it possible to say it. I have watched you, admired your courage and your heart. You are more than a princess to me. You are everything." Tears filled her eyes, but they were tears of joy and relief. The battle had tested them both, yet it had also revealed the truth they had carried silently. For the first time, Leora did not hide her feelings, and Aaron did not hesitate to meet them with his own. In the midst of the fires of war, their hearts found each other. The city still needed protection, and the enemy still lurked beyond the plains, but in that moment, nothing else mattered. The reserved princess and the gentle soldier had finally spoken the words that had long lived in their hearts. Their bond was no longer silent, no longer hidden. It was a light in the shadow of battle, a symbol of courage and love intertwined. As the citizens celebrated their safety and the soldiers tended to the wounded, Leora and Aaron stood together in the courtyard. They did not speak much after that, but they did not need to. Their hands remained joined, their eyes met, and their hearts spoke louder than any words. The city of Saris had been saved, but more importantly, two hearts had found each other amidst fire and chaos. The battle had ended, but the plains of Saris still bore the marks of conflict. Smoke rose in thin trails from scattered fires, and the earth was torn from the clashes that had taken place. Yet the city itself stood strong, its walls unbroken, its people safe. Soldiers and citizens moved through the streets, helping the wounded, repairing what was damaged, and comforting those who had been frightened. The unity between humans and aliens had never been stronger. And for Princess Leora, the victory carried both relief and hope. She stood upon the balcony of her chamber, looking out across the silver plains as the first light of the twin suns rose over the horizon. The sky was painted in gold and pink, a gentle reminder that even after darkness, light would return. Her thoughts, as always, were with Aaron. He had fought with courage and wisdom, standing beside the soldiers and protecting the people. She could not imagine the city surviving without him by her side. Aaron approached quietly, his steps soft against the polished floors. He had returned from the outer walls, where he had helped guide soldiers in repairing defenses and checking for any lingering threats. Even after the battle, he remained vigilant, dedicated to his duty. But now he sought a moment with her, a quiet space away from the bustle of the city. "Princess," he said softly, bowing slightly out of respect. "Aaron," Leora replied, her voice gentle. She stepped closer, allowing herself a moment to smile. "The city is safe, thanks to you. You have done more than anyone could ask." He shook his head, humility in every movement. "I did only what was needed. The people of Ceres deserve peace, and I would do it again for you." Her heart skipped at his words. She took a step closer, her hand brushing lightly against his. "You risked everything. You stood in the fire while others hesitated. She paused, her eyes meeting, his with unspoken emotion. "I am proud of you, and I care for you more than I can say." Aaron's eyes softened, and he reached out, taking her hands in his. The battle, the tension, and the fear melted away in that instant. "Leora, I have cared for you long before this battle began. Your courage, your wisdom, and your heart, they drew me to you. Now I will stand by you not only as a soldier, but as someone who loves you." A gentle warmth filled Leora's chest. For so long, she had hidden her feelings, balancing her duty as princess with her secret heart. Now she no longer needed to hide. She could trust him, and she did. "Then let us face the future together," she whispered, her voice steady. "Not as princess and soldier, but as two hearts united." The days that followed were filled with rebuilding and celebration. The city repaired its walls, the citizens restored their homes, and the soldiers trained to prevent any future attacks. Humans and aliens worked together seamlessly, their respect and trust strengthened by the trials they had endured. And in the midst of it all, Leora and Aaron found quiet moments to be together, sharing their thoughts, their dreams, and the simple joy of companionship. One evening, as the sun set in gentle hues of orange and lavender, they walked together through the palace gardens. The flowers glowed softly under the remaining light, their fragrance filling the air. Leora reached for Aaron's hand, and he held it gently, careful not to crush the delicate fingers in his strong grip. They walked in silence, enjoying the peaceful evening, the city resting beneath the quiet sky. "You are always so calm," Leora said softly, breaking the silence. "Even when the city was in danger, you never faltered." Aaron smiled faintly. "I am calm because I have something to protect. And when the hearts around me are strong, like yours, Princess, I have no fear." Her cheeks warmed and she laughed lightly. "You are too modest." "I am honest," he replied. "And you have shown me that courage can be gentle and strength can be kind." Their laughter echoed softly through the garden, mingling with the rustle of leaves and the songs of evening birds. For the first time in months, there was no tension, no shadow of fear. There was only peace and the quiet rhythm of hearts in harmony. In the following weeks, the city held a grand ceremony to honor the bravery of its defenders. Citizens cheered for the soldiers, for the humans who had fought alongside aliens, and for the unity that had protected their home. The king praised all who had stood firm, and in his speech he acknowledged the bravery of the princess and the soldiers who had risked their lives. Leora stood beside him, her hand lightly brushing Aaron's. Their eyes met across the crowd, and a quiet understanding passed between them. They had endured together, and now they could look forward to the future with hope. As the sun rose on a new day, the twin suns shining brighter than ever, Leora and Aaron stood at the highest point of the palace, looking out across the silver plains. The fields were peaceful, the city alive with movement and joy. Birds flew across the horizon, their wings catching the sunlight, and the wind carried the fresh scent of blossoms from the gardens below. "Do you ever wonder what the future will bring?" Leora asked softly, leaning against him. "Only that. We will face it together," Aaron replied, wrapping a protective arm around her shoulders. "Whatever comes, we will meet it side by side. Nothing can shake that." She smiled, resting her head lightly against his chest. "Then I am ready. For anything." The city of Saris thrived in the days that followed, stronger and wiser from the trials it had faced. The bond between humans and aliens became a symbol of unity, courage, and hope. And among the people, the story of the reserved princess and the gentle soldier spread, inspiring others to trust in bravery, compassion, and the power of the heart. Leora and Aaron continued their journey together, not as distant roles of princess and soldier, but as two souls who had faced fire and found love. In the quiet moments, they trained, laughed, and shared dreams of the days ahead. The shadows of the past remained only as lessons, and the light of a new dawn filled their hearts with joy. And as the twin suns set behind the silver plains, painting the skies in gold and pink, Princess Leora and Aaron stood together, hand in hand, knowing that the love they had finally confessed would endure, and that the city they protected would thrive under their care. The reserved and gentle princess had found courage not only in the battlefield, but in her heart, and the gentle soldier had found a bond worth more than any victory. Together, they faced the future, a new dawn filled with hope, love, and unity.